Hello again. Here we go with Chapter 11 of René and Me. Enjoy.
René and Me by George East. Read by Eugene Fraser.
July the 21st. The wedding has taken place, and the grand concourse through Neyu has been voted one of the most memorable for years. Following tradition, the wedding party has spent the afternoon driving slowly round and round the village, with horns sounding continuously. Apart from a confrontation with a small herd of cows and a new member for the Ditch of the Month Club, there have been no major incidents. At the reception in the bar at Neyu, I compliment Madame Ghislaine on the magnificence of the wedding feast, and ask if she will give me the recipe for the apple dumplings, which are not at all like my mother used to make. She doesn't see the joke, and questions how they could be, as my mother has only recently become a visitor to the Cotentin, but writes it down for me anyway. Today, all the couples at the wedding feast are on their best behaviour, and dressed for the occasion. There's hardly a pair of working boots in sight, and all flat caps have been left at home. And the men look just as smart. Severe haircuts have obviously taken place in kitchens all across the village, and Mr. Morris is sporting his best pair of flared jeans over a new pair of lightweight summer tights. It's a pleasant way to spend a lazy afternoon in good company. As the shadows from the gravestones in the cemetery opposite lengthen, we bed Victor the Volvo down for the night and take the shortcut across the open fields behind the village. In the distance, car horns start up and fade away in the direction of the farmhouse where René awaits the paying guest's arrival, and we are alone in the tranquillity of a perfect summer evening. Beyond a wire fence, a cow lifts its head and regards us incuriously for a moment before returning to its business. A magpie has hitched a ride upon the back of a sheep in an adjacent field, and we both automatically bid it good day for luck. The bats are swooping low, and the full moon makes strange figures beneath the trees as we make the journey last. The lights are blazing at Le Pouce as we arrive through Mr. Margot's orchard. René is showing an elderly couple how the security lamps work by driving his mobilette in and out of the yard, and some local children are happily shying stones at the fairy lights around the patio. Down at the mill, all is tranquil. We take a torch and flask of minestrone soup and set off for the big pond. It's a clear night, and a distant chorus of croaks indicate that love is in the air in other parts of our estate. There will be work to be done in the morning, with guests to see off and the farmhouse to be reclaimed. But for now, it's time to say good night to the more permanent residents at Le Pouce. August the 5th, tea time. It's far too hot to work, and in spite of walls that are 3 feet thick, the inside of the mill cottage is like an oven. After making a picnic, we walk slowly through the water meadow to enjoy a high summer afternoon in, on, and around our own golden pond. The entertainment starts with an aerial attack by a squadron of close formation swallows. Flying in from the sun, they wheel off individually to swoop down on the pond, refueling with delicate dips of beak into water as they skim the placid surface. From sheer exuberance, and just to show their skills, each pulls out of the low-altitude flight path at the last moment, coming closer to a head-on collision with a caravan roof on each sortie. In the wake of the adult wing comes an inexperienced juvenile who consistently misjudges his speed and angle of elevation and splashes down heavily before gamely limping away to gain height for another attempt. As if irritated by this display of youthful impetuosity, the black duck crashes free of the long grass on the islet and, quacking sourly, lumbers away to the relative peace of Hunter's Walk. While all this is going on, I spot a friendly dragonfly who appears to be helping an injured colleague from one clump of reeds to another. I then see that there are dozens of couples, all gamely piggybacking through the air, and my wife patiently explains that they are mating, and it is quite normal for them to do it at this time of year, in broad daylight and very publicly. I point out that Douglas, the emperor dragonfly, who's come to sit with us, is obviously above that sort of thing. She says he's probably of British extraction, or just hasn't found a mate big enough to cope with him yet. If he, of course, is a he. The swallow wing continues to make raiding passes on the big pond, and far above them our kestrel appears to see what all the fuss is about and study the tea-time menu. On the far side of the pond, a single finch has ventured onto the landing platform of the bird table and is sorting through the remnants of our high tea. The Dundee cake seems to be going well, and he has sharp words with a grey wagtail come to join the feast. As if to show who's boss of the big pond in pecking order terms, Trevor suddenly rears from the water, snaps up an unseen morsel, and is gone, with a twisting flash of pink and silver and a slap that resounds across the water meadow. Annoyed at the disturbance, Reggie and Ronnie Cray and at least a dozen members of their mob emerge from their front doors and crawl menacingly through the shallows. They are obviously in search of a suitable victim so they can demonstrate who is really in charge of the local manor. I am sitting on the ramshackle jetty with my booted feet dangling in the water, and the Cray gang obviously decide to make an example of my happy hikers. They swarm up the bank, and Big Ron takes a lump the size of a gobstopper out of my high-impact, water-resistant, welded seam sole as if it were butter. I withdraw my feet and placate the gang with a large piece of camembert, then become aware of a dead frog drifting into view from behind the island. It looks poignantly human, stretched out flat on its back like a lifeless frogman. I try to distract Donella's attention, but she has already seen it. Just as I prepare to console her, the creature draws up both knees, then almost casually straightening its legs, goes skimming at least a yard across the still water. It rests there a while, then repeats the process in the manner of an oarsman in no hurry to make his way through a lazy afternoon on the river. Whatever naturalists may say about the error of relating animal behavior to human activity, this frog is definitely sunbathing on its back and enjoying, like us, a carefree day away from the everyday worries of its own small world. Now that Trevor has taken the lead and defied the Cray gang, goldfish begin popping up all around the pond, delicately breaking the surface to feed, then disappearing with hardly a ripple. On the far bank, the action is hotting up as news of the Beano spreads, and more birds flock to the feeding table. We spot great and blue tits, bullfinch, goldcrests, a reed bunting, and a tiny wren unconcernedly rubbing shoulders before a rustle in the long grass sends them careering off to the safety of the hedgerow. Our neighbourhood feral cat is hungry again and looking for a suitable dinner companion. 8 p.m. The feeding frenzy is over, and calm has returned to the big pond. The sun seems to have enjoyed our company so much that it's reluctant to dip below the bocage lining the far end of the water meadow. Donella is deep in tales of the riverbank, and I am gathering wood to make our campfire, impatient for flickering flames, long shadows, and thick bacon sandwiches. 10 p.m. At last, the dusk is stealing in to clear the way for night, and the bats appear. Where they spend the day we do not know, nor why they stay so little time with us. Perhaps, like early evening pub crawlers, they are doing the rounds to find the most lively and inviting place to settle for the night. 11 p.m. We're about to turn in, when a shadowy figure looms out of the darkness. It's René, come to see why we're reduced to cooking on an open fire. We persuade him to stay and finish off the cold bacon sandwiches, but he's more interested in the emergency rations of canned cider cooling in the shallows by the jetty. 1 a.m. René has gone, and we're preparing to bed down beneath the stars. I have learned more about my friend in the last 2 hours than in the 3 years we have known him. Drawn out by the intimacy of our situation around the fire, and at least half a gallon of extra-strength cider, he talked longer and more candidly than during any heavy session in the bar Gislaine. He has still not revealed much about his past life, but it has obviously been a hard one, and he has had to survive on his wits alone since a child. Towards the end of our conversation, I sensed that he would have liked to unbend further, but like the wild creatures all around us, he seems ever wary of revealing himself to a potential predator. Perhaps we will get on better after this encounter. Despite the warmth of our meeting, the campfire sing-along was not a success. It's very difficult to translate the words and meaning of such classics as Ging Gang Gooly Gang and Green Grow the Rushes O to a Norman in a water meadow at midnight, especially after several cans of strong Somerset cider. 2 a.m. Like most of the other residents at La Pousse, we settled down for the night and have made ourselves as comfortable as possible with the materials to hand. Moved by the romance of the moment, I bring up the subject of the dragonfly dances this afternoon, but my wife is not responsive. She says that the ground is too hard and the stars too bright, and we are within sight and sound of René's mobile home. Just because she loves animals, she's not going to act like one. Eventually, I bid her a gruff good night, roll over and try to find a comfortable gap between the molehills. August the 6th. We have seen a wonderful sight, and one so rare in these parts that even René is impressed. As if to confirm that he has finally improved of our work, a most important and exotic visitor arrived this morning as we sat at the big pond recovering from our night in the open. Scouting for dead wood to start our breakfast fire, I saw a blur of colour amongst the elder trees by the river. Then a small bird with a large beak burst from the foliage and flew straight to perch on the feed table, where he ignored the scraps and crumbs for the common breeds and focused his attention on the water. After a moment he darted through the air, swooped, struck, and made off back to the trees, a tiny sliver of silver glinting against his rainbow coat. A kingfisher has come to La Pousse. August the 9th. Our social calendar for the rest of the month is full to overflowing. This Sunday, our village fete takes place, and we've been invited to spend a few days at a friend's holiday home in Burgundy. It's the height of the ferry tariff season, so we shall give our monthly raid on England a miss, though our financial situation is at a perilously low ebb. August the 11th. It looks as if the village fete is going to be quite a lively affair. We arrived at the field beside the church in good time for the open-air mass, followed by fairly orderly and good-natured queuing for the ladies-only portaloo. It was then time for me to make my traditional return to La Pousse for our forgotten plates, knives and forks, as these are not provided for the méchoui, which is the localized version of a North African lamb barbecue. Now the fete is in full swing, with every villager having dutifully turned up to support the occasion and provide another boost for the school book fund. There's even a rumour that there are some heavily disguised spies from Saint-Jacques in attendance. But this, of course, is a compliment, as they would only be here to see how things should be done properly at their miserable fate. In one corner, J-Pay and his team of volunteers labour in the fierce heat of the afternoon sun, turning whole lambs on spits above improvised oil drum barbecues, while Mr. Jean and Bernard are coping with a steady flow of customers at the temporary bar set up by Madame Ghislaine. While not as sophisticated as the amusements on offer at the Brickbeck Fair, the stalls lining the hedgerows have their own simplistic appeal and are marginally safer for the spectators. Most consist of rolling, lobbing, or throwing pétanque balls at pyramids of tin cans, while the main attraction is a lucky dip with the top prize of full and virtually unused tractor spanner set. Every member of the Jolly Boys Club has been roped in to help. Even René has been delegated to sell raffle tickets for the grand draw. But I notice that Madame Ghislaine follows him around to take charge of the money. As he tears off a strip, my friend gives me a stage wink and loudly declares that he's been working since dawn, and his mouth is as dry as a dead cow's udder. My wife, having kindly offered to take over the ticket sales, We retire to the bar for an aperitif before the méchoui is ready.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that chapter of René and Me, and that you join us again for the next one. See you soon.
René and Me. Written by George East and read by Eugene Fraser.